60-something, she probably was 20-something, or maybe even in her teens. But since the 60s, more women have started careers outside the home, postponing childbirth. Yet there's often anxiety over how long they can delay and still conceive. Fear that as they begin to move through their 30s, the risk of birth defects increases. If you're one of these women, or you know one, Dr. Timothy Johnson has some valuable and even hopeful news. In recent years, more women, like those you're about to meet, are holding off motherhood until at least their early 40s.
This woman is only 2 weeks away from giving birth.
That clicking is the baby's aortic valve.
On this day, she's come for her weekly visit with her obstetrician.
That snapping is
The doctor finds the mother and child to be in very good shape during his routine checkup. But what's not routine is this mother's age. Susan Morris is 42 and about to have her first child.
I tell everybody I'm 42 and I'm having a baby and it's my first baby because, I don't know, I'm just real excited about it.
Susan knows she's going to have a girl.
I think I'll just be so happy to meet her finally and to begin the journey of getting to know who she is.
Abigail, 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 good morning, sweetie.
Kathy Cook gave birth to Abigail, also her first child, at the age of 45.
Oh,
I've wanted to have a baby all my life. And it was a yearning that I had. I did think about it, especially as the years ticked away. In the morning when I first see her face, I fall in love all over again. I'm very proud of being an older mother. I think it's wonderful.
Kathy is not alone. She's one of a growing number of women over 40 starting families and breaking the so-called biological time clock barrier. According to the Census Bureau, the number of women who had their first child after 40 tripled during the 1980s.
However, this trend does raise some questions. For example, how great is the medical risk for the mother or the child? And is it fair psychologically to have a child born to a woman who is already in midlife? These are important questions, but for many women in their late 30s and 40s who worry about their biological time clock, this trend is clearly good news.
Kathy remembers the reaction at her office the day she announced she was pregnant.
A person came in and said, Kathy, I think this is wonderful. This is an unmarried woman in her late 30s, and she said, and now maybe there's hope for me. And this has happened time after time after time. It still happens to me when people find out that this indeed is my daughter, not my granddaughter.
Before she had Abigail, Kathy recalls that she often felt despondent about the prospect of not having children.
Did you ever reach a point at which you said, this is it, it's too late, it's all over?
Oh, many times, especially after I hit 40.
At the age of 40, 5 years before motherhood, Kathy was living a full life in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She had a wide circle of friends, and her career was in full bloom as Director of Development at the Eye Research Institute in Boston. But she was also interested in marriage and a family. And it wasn't until she was 42 that she met Bob Stone, and they decided to get married.
And I said to him, gee, would you like to have a child? And he said, sure.
And this one my mom made.
Susan and Tony Morris have a similar story. They live in Boston, where they are preparing for the arrival of their firstborn.
And what color is it going to be with baby spit up on it?
That color.
Tony runs his own computer company, and Susan, until recently, owned 2 women's clothing stores. They were married just a little over a year ago, and they both wanted to try and have a family. But they knew they could run into problems because of Susan's age. So they sought help from Dr. Henry Klappholtz, an obstetrician at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston. In the last 10 years, he has seen a pessimistic view of pregnancy in older women change to a much more positive view.
Now, is the change because it's better medical practice or simply a change in attitude?
I think it's probably both. I think we have come to recognize that it's not as dangerous as we had thought.
Even though the medical outlook for older mothers and their babies is better than once believed, they still do have more problems than younger mothers. Let's look at the facts. First of all, when it comes to conception, approximately 1/2 of all women over age 40 are unable to conceive.
Susan and Tony were lucky. 3 months after they were married, Susan found out she was pregnant. Kathy was also fortunate. She became pregnant after only 9 months of trying.
I was just totally thrilled, but nervous too, because at my age, there's a 50% chance of miscarriage.
Kathy was right to be concerned. Studies show that women 40 and older are almost twice as likely as women in their mid-30s to miscarry. That statistic was also sobering to Susan.
My first trimester, I was really afraid to invest a lot of feeling and emotion into this baby because of that dire warning of what kind of things happen to older mothers.
Once a woman of Susan's age has conceived and has not miscarried, she then has to worry about genetic abnormalities.
Give us a thumbnail sketch of how that risk goes up with age.
Well, it goes up. It goes up rapidly. The most common and really the most significant disease that we deal with are errors in the number of chromosomes. The most common example of that is the Down syndrome.
For example, at age 35, Down syndrome occurs in 1 out of 365 births. At the age of 40, the occurrence is about 1 in 100, and by age 45, it leaps to 1 in 32. 2 tests are currently available to detect chromosomal abnormalities. By far, the most commonly used is amniocentesis, which is done at about 16 weeks. Here, amniotic fluid surrounding the fetus is withdrawn. The newer test is called chorionic villus sampling. In this test, placental tissue is retrieved at about 9 weeks in the pregnancy. With both these tests, some genetic abnormalities can be detected through analysis of the cells of the fetus. For instance, this computer image shows a normal fetus with 22 pairs of chromosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. But here, we see 3 chromosomes at the number 21 position, where we should only see 2. The extra chromosome is proof of Down syndrome. For women over 40, these diagnostic tools have played a major role in their willingness to attempt motherhood because now they can know the risks.
Was there any question, Susan, that you would have a test to rule out genetic problems?
No. I feel that science is a gift and that we ought to take advantage of every part of it.
Would you have done this without the availability of amniocentesis?
I'm not sure. I think that test gives women of my age more courage to do it.
For some women, test results showing serious deformities will result in a decision to have an abortion. But most women will have normal results, as did both Susan and Kathy. In their cases, the test showed no genetic problems. But even when they knew their babies were okay, they still had to handle the rigors of many months of pregnancy. In Kathy's case, her pregnancy was uneventful. But that's not true of all women over 40. Studies have shown that women this age tend to have higher rates of some complications during pregnancy, including high blood pressure and gestational diabetes. In fact, Susan found out at 7 months that she had developed this form of diabetes, which usually disappears after birth. Untreated, gestational diabetes can cause wide swings in the mother's blood sugar level, which can result in large babies. So it must be controlled through careful diet.
Is it likely there's going to be any damage having been done to the baby?
Probably not. The babies aren't damaged. It's just that they're large. And the large babies are a problem.
They're a problem because they can be difficult to deliver. So Susan and her baby are being closely monitored as they get closer and closer to the day of birth.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where is your fear level?
Oh, it's getting closer
Getting closer
to
than that,
6.
yeah.
I mean, I can get pretty worried about things. And I think I've been fairly calm up to now.
In the early morning hours of February 9th, Susan went into labor. By 10 a.m., she had checked herself into the hospital.
Do you check the dilation very frequently? Or?
Well, not too often, you know.
Several hours into her labor, the pain was so intense that Susan asked for an epidural. That's a nerve block that reduces the pain from the waist down.
That's the one over there.
On duty as coach was Susan's husband, Tony.
Well, let's have this kid. Boy, look at those contractions.
Susan completely dilated, but after pushing for over 2 hours, the baby was not descending into the birth canal. So Dr. Klappholtz decided that a cesarean section was necessary. Statistics show that older women have a significantly higher rate of C-sections than younger women. And some experts say perhaps too many are done because doctors may be overly cautious with older moms. But in Susan's case, the need for a C-section was clear. 1 hour later, Susan and her new daughter emerged from the operating room. Susanna, at 7 pounds and 1 ounce, was a normal-sized newborn despite Susan's diabetes and was in perfect health. Susan was in good shape also, and both Mom and Dad couldn't have been happier.
That's for sure.
Thank you, Tony. Love you.
I love you.
She's so sweet and snuggly, and I feel really close to her. And this experience shows you that you can have children over 40.
As wonderful as this moment is, every parent knows that the real work begins after the baby is born and lasts for at least 20 years. In fact, when you go beyond the medical issues of older motherhood, all kinds of family issues arise. For example, what will life be like for Susan and Tony when they're dealing with a rebellious teenager in their 60s, or even sooner, when they're trying to chase after a toddler in their mid-40s?
I won't be doing everything a 20-year-old mother could do with their daughter, but I hope I bring some experience and wisdom and something else into her life so she won't notice it so much.
When it comes to the issue of energy, let's take a look at Kathy's experience after nearly 2 years of motherhood.
Often people say to me, well, at your age, do you have enough energy to do this? Well, at 46, I am energetic, and I'm very healthy, as I think many women my age are. Yes, I do get tired, and I confess, I go to bed at 10 or 10:30. But it was just last week I met a 26-year-old mother who said she goes to bed at 9:30. So, I think all mothers get tired.
But not all mothers have the financial security which many older mothers do have because of their years in the workforce. That security often allows an older mother like Kathy to hire someone to help her with the daily grind of raising a child. But even if the early years can be managed smoothly, there are questions about what life will be like for Abigail and other children of older moms as they become teenagers and young adults. Will they have an unfair burden placed on them because of their aging parents?
Have you thought about the statistical possibility that when your daughter is in her 30s having her children, one or both of you might not be around?
Absolutely, and it may sound simplistic, but I would hope we'd be able to offset an apparent shortening of the quantity of time with a dramatic improvement in the quality of it.
What do you think it's going to be like psychologically, emotionally, when you're in your 60s and Abigail is a college student? Have you thought about that kind of period?
I have, but I can't quite imagine that I'm going to get that old. When she graduates from college at 21, and I'll be, what, 66? I certainly hope I'll still be here. And also when she gets married, say at 30. But with a loving relationship, I hope that that won't be a problem.
But even with the downsides of older motherhood, Kathy has no regrets about having had a baby at such a late age.
Anybody who's considering it over 40, go for it. Do it. Don't give up hope.
Go ahead and try it. It's a wonderful experience. And look what you get at the end.
Good for them. I think, Tim, we know that a woman can be too young to bear a child safely for the child, and that they're really too old. We've seen the risks that can happen. Is there an ideal or optimum age for a woman to have a child?
Well, I asked Dr. Klappholtz that very exact question, and without hesitation, he said age 28, meaning that biologically, the late 20s are probably the ideal time in terms of both fertility and health.
Better than early, yeah.
But obviously, the best age to have a child is when you're ready for a child.
When you're ready for a child,
Right.
yes. What is the upper limit? Is there, how's the oldest a woman has been before menopause that they know of?
Well, I can't tell you that off the top of my head. Obviously, the older you get, the tougher it gets. And certainly, when you reach the age of menopause, meaning that you stop having periods, it is no longer possible to become pregnant. But theoretically, until that age, it is possible.
Right. Now, will these two families, are they planning to have more children? Do you know?
Kathy, I think, is saying she's lucky to have hers. Susan and Tony are definitely talking about having another child.
Better go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good work. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, next, John Stossel moved to tears. Why is he crying? He joined volunteers.